Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay in the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack-It Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
Welcome to the Black Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon and Eric Lopez with you. Brian Murphy is out of town this week, so the inmates are running the asylum here, Eric Lopez.
Yeah, we wish Murph well. He's spending some quality family time, well-deserved. We think of him. He's doing very well with that and his family. But
or is he? Because he was telling me, geez, I can't get away from this basketball team after that game last night.
Yeah, that didn't work out for him well. What a wacky, one of the craziest basketball games in program history, one of the wildest sporting events that we've ever seen. Took place, of course, when you're trying to step away. That's life. That's sports, as Murph likes to say. But who knows? He could be also sneaking out to Yankee spring training, for all we know. So,
I know. So we'll talk about UCF's stunning victory in double overtime at Cincinnati. We will talk about UCF women's basketball. I thought really taking it to South Florida and sweeping the war on I-4. We will talk about baseball and softball getting there now in the thick of their non-conference seasons. And we will also discuss the UCF football schedule coming up, kind of break that down for you. We knew who they were playing and where they were playing. We just didn't know about how it would work out. And we might have a little news on that front as well coming through. But first, let's talk about men's basketball. All right, so let's set the stage here. Okay, UCF's going into Cincinnati. Cincinnati's first place in the conference. UCF is going there without Dazon Ingram, who's sick. Didn't even make the flight.
Has the flu.
Right. And it comes out that Dre Fuller is out for the season. He has to have an operation.
Courtesy of Murph, by the way, and he can't. Since he's not here, he can't argue with us. This was a Murph bomb. He asked Dawkins about Dre Fuller at media availability. And that's when Dawkins just kind of spilled it out that Dre Fuller wasn't going to be available and he was out for the year. So That's a Murph bomb. And Murph, if you're listening, you can't argue this time.
Murph
you're not on the show. So there you go.
Murph bomb. You can't stop me, Murph. Murph bomb. So what?
Now some like noise, like to make a Murph bomb noise, like a
right. We need. Here it is. I got it. There's your Murph bomb. So UCF goes into Cincinnati playing the first place Bearcats, and they're 10.5-point underdogs. And what do they do in this game? Well, they come out actually pretty well, jump out to a bit of a lead. Second half, they just kind of keep hanging around. All of a sudden, the UCF pushes the lead out to 9 in the final moments. Well, Cincinnati kind of, to their credit, they're good. They fight their way back. Tie game goes into overtime. Goes into a second overtime. And again, the defense comes up big. Tony Johnson Jr. had what I thought was his breakout game of the season. 21 points, filled up the stat sheet. 21 points, 9 rebounds, 6 assists, 6 steals, 47 minutes. Brandon Mahan was outstanding. 20 points and 7 rebounds. He was 9 of 15 from the field. And yet, despite all that, it almost didn't happen. So UCF is leading 89-87 after, I believe it was Avery Diggs hit 1 out of 2 free throws with 1.2 seconds left after. By the way, UCF had 3 defensive stops on Cincinnati in the final minute of the second overtime. So talk about your defense stepping up on the road. And then Jaron Cumberland throws a desperation half-court shot that goes in, and it was about a half second after the buzzer. And it didn't count. And UCF gets out of Cincinnati. First, if I'm not mistaken, Eric, first win in Cincinnati.
Correct.
In program history.
Yep.
And comes right after that disastrous performance against Wichita State when Murph great column, by the way, that he wrote about how this team really needed its sort of come to Jesus moment. And boy, did they ever. Kind of reminiscent of what Wichita State did the game before they played UCF, where Greg Marshall was kind of beside himself, and that team kind of had a moment. They recovered from that, and first game back after that sort of come to Jesus moment, they had they beat UCF on the road. Well, UCF has that bad game against Wichita. Then they go on the road and they beat Cincinnati in double OT. It's just what a game. I mean, what a game, and what a performance, and a confidence-building performance for these for the young guys on the team, especially with days on out. Coach Dawkins was particularly complimentary of the freshmen who got a lot of minutes. Some of them made some, freshman plays like Tony Johnson did. He got caught. He almost got caught with a flagrant foul, even though it was kind of a flop.
Although it was a flop. He didn't even hit the kid. I mean,
right. It looked bad, but basketball officiating, you never put it past him, right?
Well, what I don't understand about that, and look, in fairness, he traveled on the play, so it should have been Cincinnati ball anyway. He did not hit the Cincinnati player with an elbow. The Cincinnati player flopped. And one of the things that annoys me is that they can review that, okay, to see if it was flagrant or not, but they can't review the fact if it was a foul or not, because that was not a foul. So that's absurd. But that was one of the many annoying calls, I'll call it PG rated here, that went against UCF, like the Colin Smith fifth foul, which was not a block. It should have been a charge.
It was an obvious charge. Charge. And for me to say, I always give the officials the benefit of the doubt because they have a hard enough job anyway. I mean, they're calling everything in real time, and they get broken down in super slow motion from 15 different angles. But that one was obvious.
Right. So you have that going on. And you didn't even mention the fact Cincinnati blitzed UCF to start the game 10-2, and you're thinking to yourself, and now full disclosure, I didn't watch the game live. I was at women's basketball calling the women's basketball game. And then as I was leaving, Jeff was giving me play-by-play updates because my app wasn't working. So I'm listening, and then I was listening to Mark on the way once I got home. And then I re-watched the game later that night on archive. Cincinnati blitzed them 10-2. Cesar DeJesus, who started at the point guard, had trouble. I think he turned it over, 3 times, like right away, it seemed like, Jeff, and really struggled, and got the early credit to Coach Dawkins. He gave him the hook. That's how Tony Johnson got the playing time at the point. And UCF came all the way back from 5 down at the half, takes the lead. I think they're up 9 at one point in the second half. Tony Johnson was incredible. And Brandon Mahan was incredible. He scored 20.7 boards. He hit 9 layups. 9 layups, big layups. And it was just an incredible game back and forth. I thought the broadcast was phenomenal on ESPNU, where they were talking about how crazy this game was. This was, by the way, the 4th straight overtime game for Cincinnati, which I think it's their 7th of the year. And
how does that team play? How does any team, for that matter, play that many overtime games and they're still standing? I mean, you could see kind of the fatigue a little bit setting in too. I mean, they were tired. They were really tired. I think,
But I'm thinking, as you're giving me play-by-play, UCF has a 3-point lead at overtime. Cincinnati hits the 3 to send it to second overtime. And Cincinnati goes up 3 early, and you're like, oh. And I think I even texted you. I'm like, yeah, we're done.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, by the way, here's you, saying the game's over. You guys getting on my case about the Super Bowl, and then look what happened.
Well, the difference is the Chiefs have come from behind from bigger deficits. I didn't know this UCF team have it in them, but they did. To their credit, they did. And it's all credit to Tony Johnson. Breakout party for the freshman, 47 minutes. I thought Darren Green was solid. Matt Milan gave him 47 hard minutes. Guys stepped up. Diggs stepped up when he had to come in when Colin fouled out. And these guys found the way to win the game. Just a remarkable game. I mean, it was a game that absolutely had everything. It's one of the games of the year in UCF athletics. When we look back on the year 2019-2020, this game is going to be way up there on the list. If not number 1, is certainly right there. And it's a memorable win that nobody will forget that watched the game. You'll be like where you were, and you hope that this is a game you look back a couple years from now and you're like, wow, this was the game that was the breakout game, like you mentioned, for Tony Johnson, the freshman, who was just spectacular. And I expect to get hopefully more minutes now moving forward. And I think they found something with this kid who, has been inconsistent, quite honestly. It's not like they haven't wanted to give him minutes. He just hasn't earned it. I mean, there's something to be said. You have to earn minutes. You don't just give it to him. And I think he earned some minutes here, and he was phenomenal. Incredible effort shorthanded on the road against Cincinnati. It's a tough. They were 31-2, Jeff, in their last 33 conference home games there.
Wow.
Not an easy place to win. And to just win this game is amazing.
Yeah.
An amazing job by the staff to rally the troops and get them prepared, and an incredible game. And it's just truly remarkable game. Truly remarkable. There's so many parts of the game that was just crazy, that just had a little bit of everything, and it's just wild. Just an amazing game.
All time, UCF is 3-11 against Cincinnati, including this victory. Obviously, 0-4 at Cincinnati. The closest game UCF actually played in Cincinnati was there was a UCF. I think it was 2017. UCF lost by 10 last year. Excuse me. It was February of last year. UCF lost by 5, but every other game was double digits or more at Cincinnati. UCF had no business, on paper, winning this game. They had no business even keeping it close, and they found a way to do it. You're absolutely right.
And what's crazy is the game was on Cincinnati's terms. The game was in the 70s.
Yeah.
Like, if you would have said UCF would have won this game, okay, well, it's got to be in the 50s or 60s. I've written about it on the site. Throw that out the window in this game. And, excuse me, it just says so much about the character of this team, of the players, and this coaching staff. And, I saw you went at it on social media with some people about Coach Dawkins, and I'm with you 100%. The people that have been critical this year is absolutely laughable.
I wanted to recap that just in case anybody didn't see it. I had said there was a stat. Okay, there was a stat that popped up on the telecast. It's one of those little sliders that pop out that if you're not careful, you don't see it. And it said that UCF returned 19.7% of its scoring from last year. Now we knew that, right? We did. Myself and Luke Saris, we ran the numbers on that. What I did not know and what I did not realize is that was the fourth lowest percentage of returning scoring in all of Division I. Fourth lowest. There are 350 teams in Division I, and that was the fourth lowest. They're 347th. And for this team to be above 500 overall, I don't care about what the schedule says. For this team to be above 500 overall and to win that game, I'm sorry. If you're critical of Johnny Dawkins, and I think one person came at me saying, well, what about recruiting? I'm like, you're looking at the recruiting right now. All right? It's absolute lunacy. They just need to stop. They need to stop and shut up and go away because they don't know what they're talking about.
No, well, that's clear. I mean, they don't have a clue about college basketball, how it works. Look, ask Roy Williams how easy it is to win.
Yeah.
They're having a miserable year. Notre Dame hasn't made the tournament. Your boy, Jim Boeheim at Syracuse, they're struggling. It's not as easy to rebuild in college basketball like it used to be anymore because guys leave quickly. There's transfers and things like that. And everybody knew that if you followed this closely, you knew this was a rebuild year. And in mid-major schools, which is what UCF is, this is how it works. You're not going to be a perennial NCAA tournament team. You're a program that's hopefully making the postseason 2 out of your 4 years. You have to develop guys. And that's part of the season here with Tony Johnson being developed. Dre Fuller, who unfortunately got hurt, is out for the year. I think showed a lot of promise as a two-way player prior to his injury. And then you got Darren Green, who's been tremendous. And as I mentioned, he's got a good class coming in next year, including a kid from Tampa that's really supposed to be really good. So in that Tampa area, I should say. So this is a rebuild year. And by the way, look at all the preseason prognostications. They were picked 9th in the league. Well, they're actually above that right now. They've got a chance, okay, if you look at the remaining schedule, 14-11, 5-8 in the league. Mm-hmm. They host Tulane on Saturday, at UConn, at Tulsa, home to SMU, home to ECU. Not saying anything's a given, because anything that's been proven this year in college basketball, and especially in the American, nothing's a given. But let's say UCF can protect their home turf and win their home games and somehow find a way to split those 2 road games. You realize that would put them at 9-9 in the league?
Yeah.
9-9 in the league.
That would put them five games. That would put them at, let's see, where are they at right now? They're 14 and 11.
They'd be 18 and 12.
They'd be 18 and 12. And could you imagine that happening? What you just said, and then they win, and then they somehow get to the semifinals of the American Athletic Conference tournament. They would eke out a 20-win season,
and probably sneak in and make the NIT in that scenario. Which
maybe, I don't know. I think well, obviously it would have to depend on if UCF were willing to pay to go to the CBI.
You don't have to pay to get in the NIT.
No, not the NIT, but but I don't know. I don't even know about the NIT. CBI, maybe, I don't know. It depends.
I don't know about the CBI. I'm not going to get into the whole CBI stuff. I'm just more about the NIT version. But even if they don't, who cares? I mean, the bottom line is to have an 18 to 20 win year when you lost everybody, basically, is remarkable what he's done. And really, you could argue if a couple things would have bounced his way. And we'll get into this more once the season ends. I think things didn't go as planned. Right. This team, all right? So not only you have all this to replace, there's things that didn't go as planned. There's players that didn't play, injuries. Guys that haven't.
UAD lot didn't make the grade. They lost that game to Memphis by 2. They lost to Temple by 4.
The Temple game where you led,
they lost at Oklahoma by 1 point. There was the 3-pointer that wasn't against Penn in the tournament out in California. I mean, there's so many points, where a bounce here or there, and who knows where this team is looking at right now.
Absolutely, 100% agree. And yet they have a chance again by the scenario I just played out. They could finish 9-9 and 18 wins, even if they don't, right? Because odds are maybe they don't. Let's just say they drop a game extra. But even if they go 8-10 in the league,
right,
with the way the league, with the parity the way it's been, that's pretty remarkable job considering this team. And Johnny is the right guy for this program, for where this program is and what it can do and what the limitations are. He's the right guy. Thankfully, the guy that the opinion that matters, Danny White, agrees with that. Not some schmo on social media that's just want to be a troll and a hater because he thinks he follows the program for 5 minutes. He thinks he knows what's going on in college basketball. So because they think we're North Carolina and we're not. So right, or they think
knock
it's
it
like
off.
Just race off wins every year.
Right.
So anyway, so that ends the book on that. I think Dawkins, and I think anybody that followed the program knew he was going to get a pay. This is not a year to judge anything. It's a rebuild year. That's what it is. And everybody has to go through it at some point. Now, a couple of interesting aspects of that game last night, which on Wednesday night, Jeffrey, which was funny. And then rewatching it back and then kind of remembering when I was texting you about it. They don't foul at the end of the first overtime, right?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the Cincinnati kid hits the 3, Cumberland, to send it to the second overtime, which is funny because the broadcast, Adams, who's the analyst, who's really good, great guy, was the analyst with Kevin Brown. He was talking about how he's asked Johnny Dawkins over and over every time he does a game, would you foul or not foul up 3? And he says, you always defend. And I'm always usually in that case, but I'm pretty flexible on it. If people want to foul, then so be it. So he lets him go for the 3. They hits the shot. So then the second overtime, I remember when Milan hit the 2 free throws, and I asked you the question, foul or don't foul. Now, I don't know where you stand on that. Are you a guy that believes in fouling in that situation or not fouling?
It's hard because I think I'm okay with fouling if it's in the backcourt. I get nervous when you're doing it in the front court and they know you're going to do it, and then some guard just throws the ball up toward the hoop, and then all of a sudden your guy's a little bit late getting over. They call it a 3-shot foul, and that's the part that makes me nervous. I'm okay. I guess what I'm trying to say is, and I know this is a cop out, but I'm okay with it in the right situation, and that situation is if you have to make them go 94 feet.
Now, the interesting is they foul with 6.8 seconds, which I remember when you told me that on the live,
mm-hmm.
I was like, ooh, that seems a little early. That seems a little too early.
Yeah.
And then Cincinnati hit the free throws, and then UCF couldn't inbound the ball, and you thought it was a quick 5 seconds. You didn't think it was a legit.
I thought it was a quick count. I thought it was a really quick count. But the bottom line is UCF. It looked like I forget who was inbounding the ball, but I think it was Darren Green. It was Darren Green, and they just froze up in that situation. And
I kind of agree. I thought it was quick, but that's what happens when you're on the road sometimes.
Right. And you have no timeouts. So they couldn't. So they couldn't advance. They couldn't advance the ball. They couldn't do any of the things that they would have wanted to. But then it came down to Cumberland again. Yeah.
Green guarded Cumberland well in that last sequence there. Made that an awkward shot for him. Stayed on him. Didn't foul. Made Cumberland miss. And then the funny part is Avery Diggs. And I remember you were telling me this live. And you're like, he's going to the line for 2. They're up 1. And I remember you told me there's like 1.2 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And he makes the first. And I'm like, and I remember I texted you, miss.
Well, he missed the first one.
Right, he missed the first one, but I'm saying miss the second one.
Right.
Miss the second one because Cincinnati has no timeouts. So even if you miss, the ball hits the rim with 1.2 seconds. It's almost impossible to get a shot off. The problem is if you make this free throw, Cincinnati can inbound and set up a catch-and-shoot situation. So, Of course, he makes the shot. Now, I heard Mark Daniels this morning on the bridge with Mike Bianchi in Orlando radio station down Thursday morning. He said, because he's obviously set up next to the UCF bench and he's right in front of Johnny Dawkins, he mentioned that Dawkins told Diggs to miss on purpose the second free throw, which, of course, he didn't.
Right.
Which always happens, right? And so that allows Cincinnati to inbound the ball. And, of course, they give it to their best player, Cumberland, who gets a shot from half court and nails it. Thankfully, he hesitated. And good credit to Tony Johnson, who made him hesitate because he was right in front of him. It wasn't like Cumberland was wide open. And as a result, the shot got off late, and it didn't count, and the Knights win it. But that was just a few parts of this incredible game with so many subplots into it. But Diggs, who played a heck of a game, would have been better off missing the second one on purpose because the Cincinnati would not have been able to get the shot off. So fortunately, it didn't come back to haunt tonight. That would have been unfortunate. But it was just what a crazy. I mean, think about when you think of like these games, Jeffrey. I was trying to think. Can you think of a regular season game that UCF's been involved in basketball?
Oh, I'm sure.
As wild as this one.
Oh, I'm sure we've got a few of them. Yeah, so we've had some wild ones. There was a game against Tulane back in 2015 that went 3 overtimes, and UCF won 103-100. There was a double OT game. That game in the tournament actually in Orlando. In the conference tournament, that Temple game that went 2 overtimes. Remember the Isaiah Sykes game?
Oh wow!
94-90. That was a pretty wild one. Let's see. I'm just going back through. There's back when we were in Conference USA.
There was a Marshall game, wasn't
yeah, there was a loss
at.
Yeah, there was a triple OT loss at Marshall, 121-115. That was back in 2010.
Then there was a triple overtime Tulsa game at home. I think it was 07, 08 range.
Yeah, that was
there.
08. Yeah, that was 08, and that was a win. January 12th of 2008, 97-91 against Tulsa, and
yeah, that's still one of the best games,
there.
If not best games I've seen in that arena, however you want to call it. It was back then. It was UCF or the new UCF arena. Then if it's the CFE arena, now it's the official financial arena.
I remember there was in 03 there was a double overtime game at Georgia State that UCF won. That was when Georgia State was good. 81-74. That was in the old day Sundays. I remember I was a student.
Was that the Lefty Drizel?
That was Lefty Drizel. That's right, and Lamont McIntosh and some of those guys. So yeah, there was some good Georgia State teams back in the day. But those are the most recent wild ones in memory. So UCF's had their there was a few of them that we had some. That bring back some memories.
Overtime wacky games. Obviously, there've been some crazy regular, non-overtime games. Obviously,
but none of them were of the magnitude of an upset to the extent that this one was. I think that's
I would argue if there was a tip-in that would have gone in Greenville in March, last March, that would have been one.
Well, yeah, that would have been one. But just to wrap this up, like you were saying, looking at the remaining schedule, at 14-11 and 5-8 in the league, UCF is back home for Tulane on Saturday.
That's going to be a challenge.
Yeah.
Noon tip Saturday. The team got in around 6 o'clock in the morning, Thursday morning.
And Tulane's ticked off because UCF beat them up in New Orleans the last time, so they're out for blood.
And they're just coming off a win. They beat SMU at home on Wednesday night. So it's going to be interesting. The Knights, they're going to need the fans on this game because energy could be an issue here. Matt Milon played, 47 minutes? Tony Johnson, 47 minutes. Darren Green, 45 minutes. And,
I think Brandon Mahan played over 40 minutes as well, too.
So the legs could be an issue here. You hope you get Dejon back just to have an extra body and see. But it's a quick turnaround when you play a double overtime game on the road. You get back in Thursday morning. Now you got to get ready for a noon tip Saturday. You don't even get the early part of Saturday to rest. So it's a quick turnaround. This is a tricky game to try to bounce back and not have a hangover physically as well as emotionally after that Cincinnati dramatic win. And it's a big game because after that, they got a 2-game road trip on Wednesday the 26th at UConn, who's playing better, and then at Tulsa, which, as we know, UCF never wins there in football or basketball. So.
Right. Tulane, I should note, 11-15 overall, 3-11 in the league, and they're right now alone in last. But that doesn't mean they're not going to be a problem.
No, and they beat Cincinnati this year, which is hilarious. That tells you how crazy this league is. Anybody literally can beat anybody on a given night, and that's not a cliche this year.
Yeah.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.
Let's move over to the women's because we had a coinciding basketball last night, big night of basketball, and the UCF women took it to South Florida last night. I thought in pretty impressive and physically dominating fashion. UCF now tied, or actually I shouldn't say, even though they're tied in conference record with Cincinnati, UCF beat Cincinnati the week before, or the game before. So UCF actually has the tiebreaker for second place in the league. 16-8, 8-4 are the Knights, and they knock off South Florida, sweeping the War on I-4 series this year in women's basketball. And Eric, you were doing the UCF radio call for this game. It was on ESPN3. Our good friend Despina Barton was on the call for that game, but. It looked first of all, UCF jumped out to a pretty big lead. I think it was 21-9 at one point. South Florida fought back, made it a ball game, but then UCF in the third and fourth quarter just kind of did what we usually see them do in the second half, as they just wear teams down and grind them down physically. Key performers at KK Wright once again gets hers, 24 points to lead all scores on 8 of 23 from the field, 7 of 9 at the line. 10 points, though, for Brittany Smith. I mean, Brittany did not have a very good night from the field. She was only 2 of 9, but she was 6 of 6 from the free throw line. Masni Kaba was 1 for 7 from the field, but 5 of 10 at the line for 7 points. Georgia Gale hit a couple threes for 8, but really it was the KK Wright show and just the defense. They held South Florida to 17 for 52 from the field. In fact, the Bulls turned the ball over 21 times and made 17 field goals, and they were 2 of 18 from 3-point range. That's their bread and butter, but it wasn't falling for them last night. Now they've had their own issues with injuries and youth, to be fair, but this was a key game, I think, for UCF overall to just kind of keep pace and win your rival game and kind of send a message to the rest of the league that we're prepared to take your best shot, and I think that's what they were able to do. They didn't play their best, but they won the game anyway.
Well, I mean, being courtside was fascinating. It reminded me a lot of the Heat Knicks games in the playoffs. What was it, late 90s, 2000? Remember those? 75, 72. Not artistic offensively, but just vicious. Every possession was contested. And it was emotional, physical. They let them play. And that's kind of what this game was. It was not artistic. I think UCF shot 26, 27% for the game, shot 21 in the first half. So this is not, if you like offense, this was not your kind of game. But it was two teams going at it, battling it out from opening tip to the last battle. Nothing was a given. Both teams I thought played well defensively. And I think the differences in the game, and I talked to Coach Abe about it in the post-game show we do, they took out South Florida out of the three-point line. South Florida, and you've covered Jose Fernandez like I have for multiple years. He's a great offensive mind, loves to spread you out, loves to go and beat you from the three-point line.
Yeah, his offense is like if you put Josh Heupel's offense into basketball. Yeah. That's what it is.
And you see, and Abe was able to take him away from the three-point line. They coming into the game, South Florida was averaging 8 threes made a game, shooting 38% from the three-point line. That's both second best in the league. And UCF shut them down. Held them to just the 2 threes that you mentioned. Didn't make them. It was not an up-tempo game. Jose likes to push the ball. And UCF got back defensively. The other thing that South Florida is very good at is rebounding. They're one of the best rebounding teams in the country, especially when it comes to getting second offensive rebounds and just total. Well, UCF dominated the boards, especially in the first half. They ended up actually having more offensive rebounds than USF, which created more possessions in the game. And I thought the glass, they did a job. Kaba was fantastic. 8 rebounds, was really a presence inside. And then in the fourth quarter, KK Wright took over. I think she scored 10 of her 24 double figures in points in the fourth quarter. She took over the fourth quarter like she did in Tampa in January. And it just grows the legend that is KK Wright. You look at her field. She was 8 of 23 from the field. She started the game 2 of 16. And got hot in the fourth quarter. And it reminded me of a Michael Jordan, a late Kobe Bryant type game where they weren't shooting well from the field, but they were determined to get the job done, whether it be getting to the free throw line and getting points that way, which she did that. She was 7 of 9, or just getting it going in the fourth quarter when it mattered. She willed that team to victory. And it was a passionate game, a huge win to sweep. And huge to sweep your rivals because, Jeff, right now the Knights are in the mix for the NCAA tournament. As of Thursday morning, their RPI is 41. Charlie Cream, who's the bracketologist for ESPN and women's basketball, has UCF in as of Monday as one of the last 4 teams in. So they're in the mix. You mentioned they're tied for second with Cincinnati for second place. And as I was told, if you look at the remaining schedule, obviously they're going to go to UConn this Saturday. That's not going to be easy considering all the energy and effort that they expended in the rivalry game against South Florida on Wednesday night while Connecticut was chilling at home, blowing out Tulane. Thanks, League. Not only do you have UConn at home, but, against Tulane, so they're going to be well rested while UCF's got to go on the road. That's not going to be pretty. But let's just say UCF drops that game. They're going to be a heavy underdog at UConn. If UCF wins out beyond that game, the rest of the way, they win out. Keep in mind, Cincinnati still has to play UConn. South Florida still has to play UConn. Let's assume Cincinnati loses to UConn as well, as does South Florida. UCF in that scenario would have tiebreakers over everybody and get the 2 seed. So it's in their control. Obviously, if you could beat UConn, then we don't have to worry about a lot of stuff. But nonetheless, they're in position here to make the tournament. And I think, Jeff, if you look at this right now, how are they going to make the NCAA tournament? If you could beat UConn, that would be awesome.
Let's say yeah. I would say if they could somehow figure out a way to beat UConn in UConn, just punch your ticket right now. I mean, that's
right. Agreed.
Yeah, I mean,
that's one option.
But the other options is you got to win 2 out of the last 3: home for Temple, at Memphis, and home for Wichita.
I think you got to win out. I think you got to win out those, especially winning that Temple.
Oh yeah, I agree.
Game. Temple's in the 70s, I believe, RPI. In fact, I'll look at it real quick where Temple stands. RPI-wise.
Temple's in kind of a cluster in the So you have South Florida at 71, you have Temple at 73, you have Cincinnati at 76. So there's kind of a cluster. There's obviously UConn at the top among the American teams that are in the top 5 in the RPI. And then there's that big gap, and then there's UCF hanging out in the upper 40s, or the lower. Is it the upper or lower 40s?
41.
Well, 41. So,
however you want to say, it's 41.
You know, I mean, I tend to say like upper 40s because they're like a little bit higher, even though it's a lower 40 number. Anyway, so there, and then there's that big gap. So you have to hold serve against those three teams if you lose to, obviously, assuming you lose to UConn, which you don't want to assume that, obviously. But, I mean, UConn is UConn. And then it's all down to to going back to Connecticut for the conference championship starting on March the 6th. If UCF can snag that 2 seed and hang on to it, you don't have to face UConn until the championship game, which is what happened last year. So
correct. And I think that's what the path to get to the NCAAs, win all of these games. Let's say you drop the UConn game, win out after that, and then get the 2 seed, get to the American Conference final, and then, play competitive against UConn. Look, I mean, you could joke about this, but I do think the 7-point loss earlier this year at home to UConn will impress the committee, and I think it's impressed Charlie Cream. It's one of the reasons why he has him in. And give credit to Coach Abe on this. One of the reasons they're in the mix for the tournament. Overall schedule strength ranking, 42nd. That's the 42nd toughest schedule in the country.
Now they've gotten some help from their early season opponents too. I think that.
Well, but think about this, because the league is down. The league is rated 9th best. That's not really great to help your cause. She scheduled the 19th toughest non-conference schedule in the country.
Yeah,
that's impressive. And you mentioned, think about this, Jeffrey, and I think you were there. You might have done PA for this game. A December game against Central Michigan is looming big right now.
Right.
Because that's their marquee win. Central Michigan is 17 in the RPI. They're like, Charlie Cream has them projected as an 8 or 9 seed right now. So that is UCF's marquee win right now in their resume.
Central Michigan is 20-4 right now, and they're in the top 20 in the RPI. UCF beat them by 6 2 days before New Year's Day.
Was that the game that KK exploded too? You can
let me pull up the box. I forget, but I mean, there's this Michaela Kelly for Central Michigan was really outstanding. She had 26 points, but
you were at that game, I think.
I was at that game. KK had 20 and 6 rebounds on 7 of 16. Brittany Smith had 12 on 5 of 9, and then Siani Martin actually had a pretty good game too. She had 10 points off the bench. So there's a game where UCF was actually trailing after 1, and then in the middle 2 quarters outscored Central Michigan. Basically almost doubled them in the middle 2 quarters. So. I mean, back then we didn't think, okay, well, decent non-conference win against a kind of just another team. Lo and behold, that you're right, it looms large as the Chippewas are the top team from the MAC in the RPI, and they're right now sitting pretty at 18.
And you're rooting for them to keep winning and win the MAC tournament, so they get in as automatic
Keep winning, Chippewas. Keep going.
So you look at that. They have that win. And then remember, they lost by 5 to UCLA, whose RPI is 8. That was without KK. That was in that tournament in Virginia where they lost to UCLA by 5 and then lost to James Madison by 3. James Madison's RPI is 42. And then they lost to UConn by 7. But those are the games that they've played very close. And now they're going to add wins against South Florida. That's going to be quality. If you can add wins against Temple, that's huge. The only thing that's hurting right now, the thing that worries me, they lost it at Tulane. Remember that game? It was at the last second, and the clock kind of ran, and UCF wasn't giving it a minute. Tulane's RPI is 158. That's that's not great.
Yeah, that one hurt. That one hurt when it happened.
It hurt. And then the Temple game, I know you were bothered by that one. You watched that game at Temple. They lost by 2. Now Temple's RPI is 75, but imagine if UCF splits those 2 games or even wins those 2 games. They might even be sitting prettier and have more room for error instead of right now, which I think is still a razor-thin air. But look, they put themselves in this position. They have a chance. They're playing meaningful games down the stretch here. They're all big, and it's a credit to them to sweep South Florida. And let's not lose fact of that. And I mentioned this to Coach, and you know this, Jeff. South Florida owned UCF in women's basketball. I mean, nobody can debate that prior to Abe's arrival. I mean, it wasn't even close.
There's still a huge gap in the all-time series, well in favor of South Florida.
But that was a sport where, even UCF, the diehards would even concede, right? Like, all right, you guys, That's not the case. Abe has somehow turned this rivalry around. They've won the last 4, and they've won 5 of the last 6 meetings, I believe. And
5 of the last 8. 5 of the last 8, yeah.
And listen, we have our friends over there. We're not going to mention, who they are, our SB Nation buddies, and we joke.
That's what we
can
mention the Daily Stampede. Yeah, they like to throw the hashtag Trash Zone. I got news for you, Nathan Bond. Trash Zone wins games, baby. Mark it down.
But what's funny is she didn't play like the traditional zone. It was more of a matchup zone,
right? Because
they didn't want to give up holes to South Florida, so she even tweaked her thing. And look, I saw some they were kind of dogging. It's funny how they were trashing the USF team for shot selection. You know why they didn't have great shot selection? Because UCF players were in their face.
Right.
Give credit where credit is due. Give UCF credit. I think Jose Fernandez is a damn good coach. We both have said that. I think we're both in the Jose Fernandez fan club in the job he's done there in 20 seasons.
Right.
This is not a what's wrong with USF basketball thing. This is a wow. This is UCF women's basketball taking it from them. Just like we gave credit to Brian Gregory in South Florida earlier this year when they won against UCF in the men. So please, Daily Stampede, give us their credit. Stop being all bitter about it. It's not our fault that we're beating you in every sport for the most part, but it's great competition, and it's credit to Coach Abe and the job she's done there. Now, that being said, now they got to go to UConn on a quick turnaround, as I mentioned. That's going to be
good luck with that. Yeah, well, Saturday at 1 o'clock, that game will be televised on ESPN3 via SNY. It'll, well, hopefully, I don't know if it'll be the last time that we see UConn, but I'm not going to complain if it is. But
we're down to 2 trips in Connecticut. That's
right.
The way I look at it. Look, here's the thing. UCF can defend. I think they can defend UConn offensively. They proved that the first meeting. The question is, can UCF score against UConn? Yeah. That's going to be the issue. Hopefully they can keep it and respectable, give a respectable score. You don't want to get doors blown off by 30 to 40 points. But more importantly, Jeff, you don't want this game to mess up with your mojo, because I think you could argue that UCF's playing their best basketball right now. Winners of 5 in a row, and I believe the last 4 games they've held opponents under 50 points. They're getting back to what they are. This is a Coach A basketball. I think she even acknowledged that she likes how they're playing defensively here. They're playing their best defensively. You would hate for a UConn game to disrupt that, regardless of the result moving forward.
Yeah. By the way, I think UConn has won, 150 now, some straight games against the American since the formation of the conference in 2013. Only twice have they played a game where they beat an in-conference opponent by single digits. One of them was Tulane a couple years ago, and of course earlier this season against UCF in Orlando. So we'll monitor that one, obviously, very closely. That came up in stores. All right, we're going to take a breather, come back. We're going to talk about the football schedule. Break it down for us. We know who the opponents are. We know where we're playing them, but now we know when they're playing them and in what order. And maybe some news to break on this also. Stick around. Be right back. Welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon and Eric Lopez with you. Follow us online at UCF_Banneret on Twitter, Facebook.com/Black and Gold Banneret. And of course, blackandgoldbanneret.com, your home for UCF sports on SB Nation, where we were able to break almost instantaneously to the conference, the UCF football schedule for 2020. Now, we knew who UCF was playing. We more or less, we knew who UCF was playing. We knew where they were playing. We didn't quite know when they were playing them. So that's now pretty much official. So the North Carolina game is confirmed for a Friday, September 4th, to start the season on ESPN. Time still to be determined. Most likely, I imagine that would be in prime time. FIU is the following Saturday. Georgia Texas Saturday after that. Here's where it gets wonky. Right now, that Georgia Tech game is scheduled for Saturday, September 19th at Bobby Dodd Stadium. UCF's conference opener at ECU is the following week. That's scheduled for Thursday night in Greenville on an ESPN network. That's 4 days in between your biggest road non-conference game and your conference opener on the road. Following that, home for Tulsa. That's the home conference opener on October the 3rd. The game at Memphis at the Liberty Bowl is on Friday, October 16th, but that comes after the bye week. October 10th is the bye week. Homecoming is Saturday, October 24th against Tulane. Halloween night, the Knights are at Houston. The interesting part here, so the FCS game with Florida A&M got moved from October 10th, which is the Knights' bye week, to November the 7th. Which is a Saturday.
2 bye weeks.
Listen, don't sleep too much on Florida A&M, who was pretty good last year in the MEAC. They were tops in the MEAC last year. I get it, but it's still you still got to show up. November. Now here's the thing: UCF does not play a single game outside of the I-4 corridor after Halloween night at Houston. Home for FAMU on November 7th. Home for Temple on November 14th. Home for Cincinnati on November 21st. That could be a huge game. And then Black Friday, November 27th, at South Florida. And, of course, the American Championship game scheduled for December 5th. So here were my takeaways from the schedule, Eric Lopez. I had 3 of them. Number 1, that 4 days in between Georgia Tech and ECU on the road is going to be rough. It's almost like one of those things where it's like, why even come home? Like, just take a bus from Atlanta to Greenville, hang out for a little bit, and then play the games there. So that's a little rough. It's nice getting the bye week before the trip to Memphis. That's going to be big. Even if Memphis is not as good as they were last year, obviously they won the conference last year, and with Mike Norvell moving on to Florida State, obviously those guys are on scholarship too. There's still some guys left over from that team. They're still pretty talented, and it's a road game. Okay, so there's that. And then, like I said, not leaving the state of Florida after you play on the road at Houston, for your last 4 games in November. And already the joke on Twitter, of course, was, oh, wow, four consecutive home games to end the season, even though the South Florida game's in Tampa.
It's got a point. I mean, there's a valid point about it.
That's nice to go down the home stretch like that. Now, there are some rumors floating about around possibly moving the Georgia Tech game, right?
Let's address this. Here's the thing. The schedule is February. TV hasn't sunk. They still can sink their teeth into their schedules of everybody in the country. So I wouldn't necessarily make any travel plans just yet because they could tweak the schedule, not just UCF schedule, but a lot of teams' schedule between now and then, and move a game from Saturday to Friday or Friday to Saturday, whatever.
Well, somebody, I forget if it was you or somebody else who made an extra interesting point about Georgia Tech, about how they have no games on national television scheduled this year.
Well, that's not true, but
I'm not none, but mostly, they're going to get shuffled down to the ACC network for most of their games. Is that right?
Well, because they stink. They're terrible. Now, that being said, that's not an accurate statement. They're going to open the season hosting Clemson on Thursday night on ESPN.
Okay, that's fair.
That'll be the first game of the year. However, here's the thing. This is where the Georgia Tech game you brought up is interesting. I'm not convinced that's going to be a Saturday game. First of all, if it stays on Saturday, it's probably going to be a noon game, ACC network. I mean, if you're and as we know now in college football, fans hate noon games. Oh, it's too hot. I don't want to go.
September 19th in Atlanta. It should be fairly nice there at that time, I think.
But they're going to complain about it. So I don't think – the point is I don't think Georgia Tech is thrilled about a noon game in Atlanta on a Saturday. So it wouldn't surprise me if they come to, hey, we'd be willing to move this game to Friday. And then UCF's like, heck yeah, move it to Friday. That gives an extra day.
We'll take that extra day. It would still be a short week, Friday to Thursday for ECU, but a day is a day. I'll take it.
Fine. And by the way, I mean, I get it. It is a short week, but we're acting like the players are going to be taking a bus back and have to bus to Orlando and bus to Greenville. These guys have charter planes. We're fine, okay? It's 2020. It's not 1960.
Well, I mean, I talk about, you're messing with a little bit of the,
You sound like
preparing.
A coach.
No.
Yeah,
you're shortening up it's one less day that you have to get ready. Now, I agree that it would be a lot more difficult if, say, those games were flipped and you had only 4 days to prepare for Paul Johnson's Georgia Tech running the triple option. But that's not the case anymore with Jeff Collins there now. So,
right.
So you're still preparing for a more conventional offense. That said, I don't think ECU is going to be that much of a pushover next year as they have been the last couple of years. And it's a big game. It's your conference opener on the road. That's a big spot.
Well, I agree with it, but I don't think it's because of the short week. I think it's because Mike Houston's a really good coach at ECU, and Greenville's going to be a tough place to play at night.
And you got Ehlers, and he's going to be good. We saw that last. Yeah, he's back.
Oh wow. So my point is, don't be surprised if the Georgia Tech game gets moved to Friday. Let's say, look, ESPN, and this is the thing with TV. It's interesting this year. Remember, Boise State now with the Mountain West is on FS1. So ESPN loses a lot of those Friday night games and even a Thursday night games they used to book Boise State in with those home games. So they got to fill those slots, and I wouldn't be surprised if teams from the American help that. So it wouldn't surprise me if a UCF Georgia Tech game gets moved to Friday on ESPN, ESPN2, or even the ACC network to help push that network. So again, and it's going to be interesting because I know some fans, I know that was a lot of people are planning on that trip in Atlanta. Don't book your plans just yet. Just wait a few months until TV kind of finalizes what they want to do before you make your plans. That would be my advice as far as especially that Georgia Tech game. But now you're right. That's a tricky part. But I got to tell you, if you're a UCF fan, if you're a UCF coach, I think you take this schedule and run with it and say thank you. Because to not leave the state in November is tremendous. And you get a bye week before that Memphis game on the road. This is a very favorable schedule to have success and have a big year. When you got the Memphis game on a Friday night, but you have a bye week before that, you have one road game between October 24th to December till December, and that's the Houston trip. And I don't think we don't know who's going to play for Houston. How do we know that more players won't redshirt for a clumsy coach over there?
Holgerson's son is probably going to be playing quarterback over there, right?
Watch. So you don't know what to expect there. And I like the FAMU game in November is like a second bye. I don't care what you say. That's a great favorable deal. But more importantly, you have Temple and Cincinnati at home. I think it's a very favorable schedule. I do like the fact, by the way, make a note of this, Cincinnati, November 21st. Why that is significant, I know some people are like, oh, well, that's right before the USF game. Whatever, who cares? Here's the thing. That is in a weekend that is a very traditionally a soft weekend TV-wise. And if you remember what happened 2 years ago, it was that weekend that UCF and Cincinnati, Jeffrey, got picked for College Game Day and ABC primetime. I think UCF and Cincinnati, if both teams live up to the hype and have great years, could be a strong candidate to have College Game Day and ABC primetime back in Orlando, back on campus at UCF that weekend.
That was my first thought. Somebody was telling me that that Georgia Tech or North Carolina would have been candidates. No, because North Carolina is on a Friday, first of all, and second of all, obviously the stuff that you talked about with Georgia Tech, but also that game's in Atlanta. So what does that matter to us? And they're not good.
If you look at the schedule for college football, week 3, trust me, there's a lot of great games. Like Alabama, Georgia plays that weekend. I think that's gonna.
I don't think they're gonna pick UCF and Georgia Tech on a Saturday over that.
And the Carolina one, you brought it up. It's a Friday night game. It's a weeknight. That's not gonna work. I think Cincinnati is your best chance to get game day to come back here. The negative is I think Memphis could have been an option if it was a weekday, but I don't think Memphis is going to be that great. So it might not matter. But yeah, I agree. I think UCF Cincinnati is your best bet. UCF avoids Navy in the schedule. So no triple option. They avoid SMU. And I'm going to give you credit. SMU's got a very favorable schedule.
SMU schedule is compared to they released all of the teams in the American their full schedule. SMU has a cupcake schedule by comparison.
Not to UCF, I wouldn't say
all
that.
their tough games are at home. I mean, UCF has I think I would say two really challenging road games. The Georgia Tech game, and I still think the Memphis game is going to be a challenge. We don't know what we're going to get from Houston. We don't know what we're going to get from South Florida. We don't know what we're going to get from ECU for that matter, even without the short week. But I mean, SMU's schedule is an atrocity.
SMU's 3 of their last 4 in the year is on the road. They're not staying in Dallas for the entire month like UCF.
But they're easy games the rest of the
No, they're not. Not on the road. Yeah, tell that to UCF last year when we went up to Tulsa. Tell me how that went. Didn't go well. So when you go on the road, tricky things happen. So I would rather have the UCF schedule where they're at home the rest of the month of November. But I don't disagree with you on this regard. I think SMU is a definitely threat to get to the conference championship game. Remember, there's no divisions this year. There's no divisions.
Right.
So
no UConn.
Yeah, bye-bye UConn. So hopefully it works out. I think this is going to be a better UCF team than last year. More experience at quarterback with Dylan Gabriel. They have their secondary should be stacked. I think it sets up to be a great year for UCF. I think they'll be a preseason top 25 team. I think they're going to be the favorites to win the American. So I know you don't like it, Jeffrey, but there's going to be high expectations from the fan base.
Well,
put it this way. They're expecting a second trip to Atlanta.
The East is going to be hard again. Okay, Cincinnati I think will be good.
It doesn't matter. There's no divisions.
Well, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right, man. Old habits die hard. Cincinnati is going to be better. I mean, UCF should be one of the favorites, but they were coming off of a really good year for the conference, and if Cincinnati keeps doing what they're doing, they're the top competitor. We got some. Oh, go ahead, Eric.
I think they will with Luke Fickell turning down Michigan State. They're recruiting fantastic up there in Ohio. I believe they had a 40 in their latest recruiting class was in the 40s. I definitely agree with you. I think Cincinnati and UCF is setting up to be a potential rivalry moving forward in football with the way if Luke Fickell could stay there and the way he's recruiting long enough. I think UCF Cincinnati will definitely be a marquee game in the league here for years to come.
A little bit of a breaking story that literally just dropped. We're recording this on Thursday afternoon. The spring game date and time are set. Saturday, April the 4th at 2:30 p.m. Saturday, April the 4th at 2:30 p.m. And that might not be as interesting as the fact that the yard sale is happening on the morning of that game. So
that's back. Okay, so that's significant because a lot of people liked that a couple of years ago. It was not involved, I think, last year. So that is significant on there as far as the spring game, whatever.
Yeah, so that's cool. I like that. I wish they would give the players the option to keep some of their equipment.
Great.
But I don't know if they do. Maybe somebody from UCF Equipment could reach out to us and. I know that they sell a lot of the helmets for the fans, and it's a way to raise money. But I would hope that if you're a player, they ask you before they pick up your helmets to go to be sold in these yard sales and auctions is like, hey, when you leave here, do you want to keep one of the helmets, and which one do you want to keep? And they at least have the option to do that because those guys. It's something that they should have for their services to the program. So anyway, spring game April 4th, 2:30. By the way, we got some really good football content this week on the site, and I wanted to promote some of that before we take a break. Anthony Lenahan's back, breaking down Marlon Williams. Anthony expects Marlon to have a huge senior season in 2020. Broke down the numbers, broke down the film. Make sure you check that out. Also, I went back in time and regraded the UCF football recruiting class from 2015. That's my MO. I love doing that. We go back 5 years because some guys do stay 5 years, and I have my own little star system that we put together for how good a guy was at UCF, and that's going to be. I do encourage you to check that out. Going back, we now have 12 seasons worth of recruits that we have analyzed from 2004 to 2015. So make sure you check the full database, and especially going back to the 2015 class. By the way, we got softball on that. What else do we have going on that April 4th day, Eric?
Well, here's the thing. Baseball is hosting Wichita State that night. I think it's a 6:00 game, so you got a little bit of a doubleheader.
Yeah.
That Saturday. Softball's on the road at UConn, but baseball. So you could have a little double.
So softball's going to be buried under 6 feet of snow in UConn on April 4th?
Probably. That's thankfully, be the last time we have to deal with it. But yeah, baseball's got a series with Wichita State, 6:00. So you got a chance for a little doubleheader there, spring football followed by baseball. I like when they've done that in the past, so that'll be fun. And then Maybe I wonder, Jeffrey, too. That could be also the weekend of the Hall of Fame, right? If they return that for 2020 edition.
I hope they do that. I hope they make that a regular thing. That the spring game is kind of like your Hall of Fame week, and
well, they announced earlier in the year to take nominations, so I'm assuming they're planning on doing it this year.
I sent in my nominations. Did you send in yours?
Absolutely.
Okay, good.
But we don't know officially if it's going to be that weekend or do they decide to move it to another weekend. We don't know any of that. All we know is if they do it like they've done, recent history would suggest that could be the weekend of the Hall of Fame as well, because they've done it around the spring game. But that is not official. That is just speculation.
Purely speculative. So keep your eye on that. Let's take a quick break. When we get back, we will talk baseball, we will talk softball, and wrap it up here on the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Stick around. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon and Eric Lopez with you here. Let's wrap this thing up and talk a little bit about softball and baseball. So baseball, we'll lead off with the Knights starting their season by sweeping a 4-game set with Siena, but they lost on Tuesday to Stetson at home 6-5. So the Knights are 4-1 on the season. After that sort of uneven 2-1 performance on opening night, on Valentine's night against the Saints of Siena, UCF then went on to win 11-4, 9-1, and 10-2. I was very fortunate to call the 9-1 game, that was a doubleheader on Saturday, and Mark Daniels called me up to fill in for him on that second game. It was a 9-1 game. There were a couple of home runs in that game for UCF, and then they wrapped up the series on Sunday 10-2. I thought that the really impressive thing for UCF baseball, Eric Lopez, was in that weekend series was the pitching. In the first game, Colton Gordon, junior college transfer, making his first start as a Knight. Outstanding. 6 1/3, 1 run, 4 hits, struck out 10. All right. Game 2. First game of the doubleheader on Saturday. UCF wins 11-4, and the winning pitcher in that game for UCF was Trevor Holloway, back in action. No runs, 3 hits, 9 strikeouts, 1 walk in 5 innings. The second game of the doubleheader, the game that I called, really impressed with Hunter Pattison, true freshman out of Vero Beach. 5 1/3, 1 run, 2 hits, walked 3, struck out 7. And then Sunday, now bear in mind, this is a game that you're not really expecting to kind of factor in, because usually, obviously, you play 3 games. But it's a big return day for Joe Sheridan, who got the first start in 600 and some days. Had a little bit was a little wobbly at times, letting guys on, but final line was pretty good. 4 innings, 2 runs, 1 earned. 2 hits, walked 3, struck out 5. But the story from that game was Jack Sinclair, who came in relief and threw another 4 innings, struck out 10, including 7 in a row at one point. No runs on 1 hit, and he only walked 1. So so if you're Greg Lovelady, I think you got to be thrilled coming out of that. And I know it's Siena, okay, but you got to be thrilled coming out of that opening weekend with the arms that you have at your disposal. Now, UCF decided to go the bullpen by committee route against Stetson. Nobody threw more than 2 innings. Zach Hunziker got the start, struck out 2. Jalen Whitehead gave up 1 run, struck out 1. David Litchfield threw another 2 innings, gave up 1, struck out 1. Billy McKay kind of got roughed around a little bit. He gave up 3 runs in that game, but only on 2 hits in 2/3 of an inning. So, but if you're Greg Lovelady, that first weekend, you got to be pretty happy with how everything turned out. That was that's like, okay, like he talked to us before the season, and you can listen to our baseball preview episode about how happy he was with the depth that he had both in the lineup and on the hill, and we saw that in spades this weekend, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. And, me and Murph obviously broke that down in depth earlier this week about the positives. Now, it's early. It's a young team. I think we saw some of that youth in the Stetson game on Tuesday. I thought, there were some at-bats that showed its youth, like Pablo Ruiz, I think in the 9th inning with the runner at 3rd and 1 out, was overly anxious, aggressive, and instead of, hey, let's just calm down and, let's put the ball in play and tie this sucker up, was overly aggressive trying to be the hero ball. And we see that with young players. I think you'll learn from that, and I think they'll learn from that overall, that experience. So, but I think there's positive youth, and I think we're just going to have to be patient with him. I think you're going to see some ups and downs early. But you're right, the pitching is tremendous. It's talented. Now, Greg Lovelady mentioned after the Stetson game that Colton Gordon's going to start Friday night at Auburn. Auburn's ranked number 8, so you could have a matchup of Colton Gordon against Tanner Burns, who could be a top 10 MLB draft pick this upcoming draft. That could be sensational there. And then Trevor Holloway is going to start Saturday's game, and then he left it open for Sunday, so to see how the series goes. So I think we're going to learn a lot more about this team and how they handle the environment at Auburn. This was an Auburn team that made it to the College World Series last year. They're very talented. They're among the favorites for the SEC title. They're going to be playing a tough place every time you go to an SEC park. As Lovelady mentioned after the Stetson game, it's a great test because that's kind of the type of atmosphere you may have to deal with if you make the regionals and postseason and on the road. So I think we'll learn a lot about this group moving forward. But I like the young talent a lot. I think there's upside. I think their arms are it's the deepest quality of arms that Coach Lovelady's had since he's been here.
Yeah.
And I think it's just a matter of the offense, and the youth in that offense to be, how quickly can they figure things out when they face quality pitching? It was good to see Talton Wingo hit a home run in the Stetson game. He kind of had a quiet weekend against Siena. So we'll see. They're going to be tested here against Auburn, who's very good. I'm looking forward to watching it. I'm assuming it'll be televised online. I would assume, I'm going to take a quick peek. I would assume it's on SEC Network Plus online.
I haven't seen any link on the UCF side. I'm going to pull up Auburn's schedule here real quick, see if they have anything here. But
so I think it's a fun one. I think we'll learn a lot about this team. It's early. I don't want people to overreact. I saw some people overreacting to the Stetson loss. Stetson, I think it's going to be pretty good.
Oh,
Murph brought it up into.
We're really overreacting. We're really overreacting. Oh God.
Well, first of all, it's a midweek, and I try to tell people this: midweek wins and losses are overblown. Where you're judged on more is the weekends, and especially in conference. But I also think Stetson and Murph brought this up earlier in the week when we did the podcast on Monday. Came out Monday. Stetson had a lot of freakish injuries last year. They kind of dealt with some things. They're healthy this year. They should be back to an NCAA tournament quality team and probably among the favorites in the A-Sun. And UCF gets to go back to DeLand later in this year. So I wouldn't judge too much on the Stetson result. It was one of those midweek early games, like things happen.
Yeah.
So I want to see what happens more with Auburn and see how they match up and see how they perform out on the road. Auburn 5-0 off to a great start, and they're hitting the ball very well. So I'm seeing SEC Network Plus, by the way, Mr.
I was just going to say they all 3 games on Auburn's website do take us to SEC Network Plus. So if you need to, that's auburntigers.com. If for some reason that link doesn't pop up, it'll be on SEC Network Plus, which I believe you can watch through an ESPN Plus subscription, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't know about all that. I just know you can watch it without an ESPN Plus subscription. So there's many ways you can watch SEC. That's free. That's not like you don't need ESPN Plus to watch it.
All right, never mind. Forget I said that. All right. So
now next year, that statement will probably be accurate, but we're not going to get into that.
Gotcha. Softball. All right, Eric Lopez, another successful weekend for UCF softball over Valentine's weekend, going 4-0, including 2 wins over Iowa State, a W over Villanova, a 10-0 win over FAU. Dominating performance by UCF softball this weekend as they get ready to head to Tampa for a pair against number 12 Tennessee and a pair against FIU. Update us on this weekend here, because I was following the action as they were taking place right across from baseball, and well, I mean, there really wasn't that much to follow. They were whooping everybody in sight.
They did. There was dominant. Georgia Blair hit 3 home runs over the weekend, hit one to right, one to center, one to left. I mean, she has power to all fields. Maybe the best power hitter we've had since, if you want to say Samantha McCloskey, that's cool, but definitely, and she's got she's got a chance to maybe be a double-figure home run hitter, which we haven't had since Stephanie Best, at least on a consistent basis. But they got talented depth offensively. They've got power off the bench. Really cool. One of my favorites was on Sunday, Molly Rainey, her Knights debut. She gets pinch hit. Her parents, they're all from Oklahoma. They're from Ada, Oklahoma. They drove from Oklahoma all the way to Orlando to watch.
That's a brutal drive.
I did the MapQuest said it was about 18 hours, and that's not including. I don't know if that includes stops or not. So they made the way. She pinch hits on Sunday and hits a 2-run homer. That was pretty cool to see. But it shows they have power. They have power at the bench. Mm-hmm. She likes to use her bench as a weapon, and they're very deep offensively. Now that's going to get tested this weekend because they'll play number 12 ranked Tennessee in Tampa. Just like baseball. I think we're going to learn a lot about them. A 2-game series against Tennessee in Tampa. They'll also play FIU for 2 games in Tampa. It's a 14 tournament, South Florida being the host. But I think we're going to learn a lot. And these are games now. You look at the stretch now for softball. It's important to get off to that 9-2 start at home because now you look at the next, I think 22 games. Jeff, you can double check if I'm right. 19 of the next 22 games are on the road, is away from UCF. And it starts this weekend. 2 games against Tennessee, 2 games against FIU. Then they go on the road in Tallahassee for a midweek against Florida State before they come home for a tournament. And then, of course, they go out west for that marquee tournaments schedule.
Man, that is a haul, bro. I mean, that is
right.
Woo.
This is where they can build your resume, right? This is where you have opportunities to build your resume. They came up short against Washington in a game that was 5-3 going into the 7th inning, and then it kind of got out of hand in the 7th, a little misleading score. But we're going to learn a lot against this Tennessee team that has a young freshman pitcher by the name of Callie Turner, who is a phenom, is one of the top freshman pitchers in the country. She's taught by a young lady by the name of Casey Clark Zerby, who was a personal coach of Allison Kime and Mackenzie Audis, if you want a UCF connection to that. So we're going to learn about this team. The Knights have a great pitching staff depth. We learned that as well with Jean Mancha, as well as Brianna Vasquez pitched well in a win against Iowa State, backing up Aaliyah White. Aaliyah White, by the way, over that weekend, Jeffrey, hit the 70-win mark, 4th UCF pitcher to ever do that. And then in their shutout win against FAU, tied Allison Kime for 3rd with 71 wins, has an opportunity to pass Allison this weekend, potentially in Tampa, which is Aaliyah's hometown and also Allison's home. Kind of ironic if that happens.
Well, I'm really this first stretch here for UCF, like I said, going to be really critical. When was the last time that we played Tennessee? Was it that preseason game? Was it?
We played them in Claremont. Yeah, you were with me. Yeah, we beat Ashley Cole opening weekend in Claremont.
Cole, that's right.
Richardson Invitational in 2010.
Oh, it was that was so cold that day. Do you remember how cold it was? Oh my God, it was freezing.
Yes, it's the only time in my 14 seasons of calling softball we were playing Georgia right after that game, and it was nighttime, and it was in the 30s, and we were down big, and I'm like, let's just get run roll so we get out of here.
I remember I was shooting video for that game. I'm down there down the baseline over by our dugout, and I am absolutely freezing because I don't know what it was, but it was particularly windy. And Claremont's basically the highest part of the Floridian Peninsula. It's not the highest point in the state. That's up in the Panhandle. But if you're talking like down in the peninsula, it's the highest point that there is. And I don't know, man, the wind was whipping, and I was just absolutely freezing that day. It was bad. But yeah, I remember that one. I remember for some reason we also played Tennessee, I think back in like 03 or 04. And
we played them at home in 09 in an extra inning game, a 1-0 game. We've had some memorable meetings with Tennessee.
This one was a preseason. This was a preseason game. I think Monica Abbott was playing for Tennessee at that time.
Was 05?
That was at the old complex, which now does not exist. But that game I remember being excruciatingly cold. So what is it about us playing Tennessee when it's cold? Anyway,
shouldn't be this cold this weekend in Tampa.
Well, yeah, it's at USF. It'll be cool. It won't be cold. It should be nice. Yeah. Should be so. Yeah. So all right. So that's what we got coming up for softball this coming week with that USF tournament, and of course Wednesday against number 9 Florida State, 6:00. Can't forget that. You going to that game?
Which one?
The Florida State game.
Not going to Tallahassee.
Okay.
to be determined on Tampa. If you want to come,
that's a long trip, man.
Tallahassee or Tampa?
Well, for me, toting two kids around both. But that's a game that we'll be watching on. Well, hopefully, I don't know if they'll have television for that game, for the Florida State game.
FSU, they probably will on ACC Network Extra.
Okay.
Online. Tampa, not so much.
Gotcha. All right. So we'll be monitoring those games as they roll on through.
And it's big. It's big. I mean, we're going to learn a lot. And if you look at this schedule, 19 of the 22, you want to get some resume wins over ranked teams. And let's be honest, Jeff, let's play the geography game. A little easier to win a game in Tampa against Tennessee than, say, Los Angeles against the number 1 ranked UCLA Bruins.
Ain't that the truth?
Right?
Other quick updates. I want to get women's tennis, by the way, 6-2. Knocked off Nebraska.
Kenny's like waiting to hear from you to say, hey, we're coming. He was telling me Wednesday night, hey, you guys are welcome. Just let me know. Carpet's ready.
They, by the way, they beat UC Santa Barbara 4-1 in a match where they played the doubles point on Valentine's Day, and then they played the singles 2 days later, which was kind of weird. But they then came up and swept Nebraska 4-0. Men's tennis right now 4-3, but they've won 2 in a row at Virginia and at Illinois in consecutive weeks. They come back home to play FAU in 9 days on Saturday, February 29th. But after losing to 2 ranked teams and at UCLA and then at Wake, to get those 2 wins on the road again against a top-notch ACC team and a top-notch Big Ten team, big for them. So we'll see them again against the Owls on February 29th. The Leap Day coming up a week from this coming Saturday.
By the way, Kenny, give me this stat. This is this kid's going to be a great SID. So tennis has played on a Leap Day twice before.
Okay.
They're 2-0.
All right.
He told me the years, but I'm old, so I forgot. But he gave me the years, and I'm sure it'll be in the game notes, so I'm not going to spoil it.
Are the opponents? Are the opponents any good? You remember? That's all right. If you don't.
I think he told me. I just don't remember. I was busy. I was in the middle of a women's basketball broadcast, my mind. But the kid's ready. I'm sure it'll be in his notes when that week comes up.
I'm looking forward to that. So, all right, what do you got? What do you got coming up here, Eric? I know I've got one. I want to get one of your. We're still doing the stuff of the decade. So, I reached out to Tristan Spurlock, got his input on the women's basketball one. We're going to be dropping that one pretty soon. I want to get the top 10 games as well out this week as well. Because, there's some days when we have some it's pretty light out there. So, we'll try and pump those out. What else do you have coming up?
Yeah, hopefully helping you push that out and, just kind of getting ready for the softball to come out next weekend. I'm going to be following them up in Tampa to see. That's a very significant and see how they do there. And then baseball at Auburn. We're going to be following all that. And spring it's getting busier and busier. I mean, this is everything's going on right now. That's the thing. So it's just keeping track with all these marquee games. You think about this weekend. You got women's hoops at top 10 UConn, baseball at top 10 Auburn, softball playing number 12 Tennessee. That's pretty impressive stuff. You mentioned what women's tennis has got coming up, and then men's basketball home against Tulane, trying to build off a classic, memorable win against Cincinnati. I mean, it's a lot. The answer is a lot's going on to follow.
Yeah, we are definitely well within the spring sports equinox as well here as we head into the weekend.
I might actually do women's basketball where we stand postseason after the UConn game.
Okay. We're gonna have to. We got to start thinking about that now because here's. I mean, we're heading into the last week of February, and March is coming. So, this year is already flying by. Unbelievable. All right. So make sure you follow that. Make sure you follow all of us on Twitter at UCF_Banneret, Facebook.com/Black and Gold Banneret, and of course, blackandgoldbanneret.com, where you can get all the latest on all UCF sports right here on Destination's home for UCF. So for all of us here at Black and Gold Banneret, including Eric Lopez, my name is Jeff Sharon. Thank you so much for listening. This has been the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Enjoy the weekend. We'll catch you next week.